Ma'am, that seat's not for you. The voice wasn't loud, but it was cold, sharp enough to freeze the entire first-class cabin in place. No one moved. No one spoke. Everyone just stared. The black woman standing at the cabin door, dressed in a simple cream coat with a worn laptop bag in hand, didn't argue. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't have to, because 45 minutes from now, every crew member on this flight, from the captain to the head flight attendant, would be fired, and none of them knew. They had just humiliated the owner of the very jet they were serving on. Monica Ellis wasn't wearing designer labels. She had no shiny VIP badge. She boarded just like any other passenger. But beneath that calm expression was a storm 27 years in the making. This wasn't her first time being told she didn't belong. That happened when she was 17. Same situation, same seat, same judgment. But this time, she wasn't a scared teenage girl in a hoodie anymore. She was the CEO of Ascend Airlines, the owner of the plane, the one who signs the paychecks for every person on board. So why didn't she speak up? Why let herself be humiliated again? Why stay quiet? Simple. She wasn't here to yell. She was here to watch the people in power expose themselves. And the passengers' cameras, still rolling. 45 minutes, one boarding pass, one look of dismissal, and an entire broken system would be brought to its knees by a woman who had spent her whole life being underestimated. If you've ever been treated differently because of your skin, your clothes, or the ticket you held in your hand, stay till the end of this story, because this time, the one they overlooked wins. The flight from Denver to Charlotte was just under 3 hours, a quick hop across the country, the kind of route packed with consultants, sales reps, and weekend executives trying to get home before Monday morning meetings. It was a Friday evening. The terminal buzzed with that particular brand of tension only airports can produce. Tight connections, lukewarm coffee, and delayed flights overhead crackling through the speakers. But Monica Ellis moved through it all calmly, almost silently. She didn't carry a designer suitcase or wear a tailored power suit. No loud phone calls, no "do you know who I am" energy. Just a woman in her mid-40s, dressed in neutral tones, hair pulled back in a low bun, leather flats clicking softly against the polished tile. To anyone watching, she could have been an IT project manager heading to a conference, or maybe a school principal on a business trip. No one would guess that she was the founder and CEO of Ascend Airlines, the very company operating the flight. But Monica never liked attention. Not when she was a kid growing up in Atlanta, the daughter of a public school teacher and a postal worker. Not when she graduated top of her class at Howard. And not even when she inked a $300 million merger deal that made headlines on Bloomberg. She'd learned early that quiet power is often mistaken for weakness. And today, it would be again. Gate C-29 was already boarding when Monica arrived. The flight number, AA2764, Denver to Charlotte. She handed over her digital boarding pass. 1C, first class. The gate agent smiled politely. Enjoy your flight? No issue. No second glance. It wasn't until she stepped on board that the atmosphere shifted. The cabin was a crisp, sterile 72 degrees, lightly scented with citrus-scented disinfectant. The leather of the first-class seats gleamed under soft cabin lighting. Passengers were still settling in, unzipping bags, adjusting neck pillows, tucking away devices. Then came the pause, the kind you don't see, but feel. It started with flight attendant Haley Monroe, a tall blonde woman in her early 30s with a rigid posture and a clipboard she held like a weapon. Her eyes scanned Monica from head to toe, then flicked to the seat number, 1C. Haley didn't say anything at first, just raised an eyebrow, subtle but unmistakable. Then, without smiling, she leaned slightly forward and said, "Are you sure you're in the right cabin?" Not, "Can I help you?" Not, "Welcome aboard?" Just those 8 words. Cold, calculated, draped in faux politeness, but heavy with something else. Monica smiled gently, not because it was funny, but because it was familiar, painfully familiar. She handed over her boarding pass. Haley barely glanced at it before murmuring, "Please wait in the galley while I verify." And just like that, the tone was set. First-class passengers glanced up from their phones. One man in a navy suit smirked. A woman in pearls adjusted her seatbelt like Monica's presence made her uneasy. Monica didn't argue, didn't raise her voice. She simply stepped aside, to the edge of the cabin, to the edge of dignity. Somewhere in that pause, a storm was forming. Not outside the plane, but inside the cabin. Not of thunder, but of reckoning. Because what they didn't know was that Monica Ellis wasn't just holding a boarding pass. She was holding every single one of their jobs. And every second they made her feel less than, they were writing their own exit papers. And they'd find that out sooner than they thought. The captain stepped out of the cockpit with a confidence that came from thousands of logged hours, and perhaps a little too much unchecked authority. Captain Aaron Briggs, mid-50s, graying temples, an ex-Navy pilot who never left his sense of entitlement in the military. He looked Monica over once, then twice, longer than necessary. Then came the words, not shouted, not even said rudely, but heavy, intentional. "Ma'am, first class is reserved for priority passengers. You'll need to head back, unless there's been a mistake." Monica raised an eyebrow, calm and composed. She didn't flinch. She didn't explain. She just handed over her ticket again. Aaron looked at it, then turned to Haley. "Double check with the desk. This doesn't look right." It didn't matter what the boarding pass said, or what Monica looked like. They had already decided she didn't belong. Passengers were now fully engaged in the unfolding scene. The man in 1A, Jason Myers, corporate real estate executive with a phone glued to his hand, muttered, "Every time. Someone always tries to sneak up front." The woman across the aisle, Trish Davenport, wearing a cardigan the color of money, didn't say anything. But the way she clutched her purse spoke volumes, and yet Monica remained still. Haley returned with a subtle smirk. "They're checking the system. It might take a minute." Then, in a tone meant only for the captain but loud enough for the cabin, "She might have been upgraded by mistake. Happens when people use points or other methods." Monica's eyes didn't shift. Not to them, not to the murmurs. She was used to rooms filled with assumption, but it never stopped stinging. Then it escalated. Without asking, Haley reached for Monica's laptop bag, as if it were already out of place. "We'll need to store this properly, ma'am. First class has standards." She said the word standards like it was a code. Not about safety, not about regulations, but about people. Before Monica could respond, Haley handed the bag to a younger attendant, Brooke Sanders, who looked uncertain. "Store this in the rear compartment," Haley snapped. Brooke hesitated, looked at Monica, then back at Haley. Monica nodded slightly. Permission or grace? Maybe both. Aaron turned back to Monica, arms folded. "It's a simple check. If you're in the system, great. If not, we'll get you seated properly." Properly, as in farther back. She glanced toward the galley. Passengers watching, phones tilted, one even recording now quietly from behind a newspaper. Still, she said nothing. But inside, something shifted. Not rage, not panic, but something colder, something strategic. She tapped her phone twice. Screen lit up. A message sent silently. Ascend Protocol Delta. Engaged. Begin internal log. Captain Briggs didn't notice. He was too busy smirking, too busy policing appearances instead of verifying facts. He turned to Haley again. Make sure she's not delaying takeoff. We don't fly with uncertainty in the cabin. The sentence was layered. Uncertainty wasn't about the ticket. It was about the woman holding it. And for Monica, it was no longer about being seen. It was about being misjudged by people who didn't even know they were on her plane. In that moment, every insult, every sidelong glance, every degrading assumption, they all stacked like kindling. And the spark had just landed. The flame, it was coming. The humiliation was complete, or at least they thought it was. Monica stood beside seat 1C, no bag, no voice, no welcome. Just silence. A silence that felt like contempt in a business suit. But inside, she wasn't broken. She was calculating. She'd sat through boardrooms where she was the only woman, the only black executive. She'd listened to colleagues mispronounce her name and still take her ideas. But this was personal. Not because they didn't know who she was, but because they didn't think they had to. From the shadows of the galley, Brooke Sanders hesitated again. She stood by the crew storage bin, Monica's laptop bag in her hands. Haley had snapped, ordered, glared. But something in Monica's eyes had stopped her. It wasn't anger. It was precision. Brooke looked around, then quietly set the bag aside, unscanned, and reached for her own phone. Meanwhile, Monica lifted hers. She tapped. 3 slow taps. Deliberate. The screen flashed. Ascend Delta active. Internal audit recording initiated. Voice and video logging enabled. Remote access granted. Somewhere, in a quiet downtown Atlanta office, Kendra Miles, Monica's executive assistant, saw the alert. She didn't ask questions. She didn't need to. Instead, she opened a dashboard labeled Cabin Ethics Monitoring and clicked Begin Documentation. Back on the plane, Captain Briggs returned to the cockpit. Haley stayed near the curtain, arms crossed, occasionally glancing back. Passengers shifted uneasily. The tension wasn't spoken, it was breathed. In seat 2D, a young woman whispered to her husband, I don't know what's going on, but it doesn't feel right. Her husband nodded. She didn't even say a word, and they're treating her like a threat. 3 rows back, a teenage boy in a hoodie watched Monica carefully. He didn't know who she was, but somehow she reminded him of his mother. Dignified, tired. Watching. Monica remained silent. Her phone still open, screen dimmed now. Recording. Logging. She didn't look at the camera. She didn't need to. Because she knew. The cabin was the witness. The silence was the proof. And the system would carry the rest. Then, for the first time, she spoke. Software calm. Firm Captain Briggs. He turned in the doorway. Still smug. Still unaware. You're making a mistake, she said. He scoffed. No mistake, ma'am. We just need to keep order. That's our job. Monica tilted her head slightly. Is humiliating passengers part of the procedure now? Haley stepped forward, arms folded. Look, if you're not going to cooperate, we'll be forced to delay the flight. You can't just flash a fancy badge and expect... But Monica cut her off. Not with volume, with presence. She reached into her pocket, pulled out a single card. Sleek, matte black. Silver lettering embossed clean across the surface. Monica Ellis, Chief Executive Officer, Ascend Holdings, Inc. She held it out. Didn't toss it, didn't shake it, just held it. Haley didn't take it. Brooke did. She read it. Twice. Out loud. And that's when the cabin changed. You couldn't hear the sound of minds shifting, but you could feel it. The whispers, the breaths, the silent math of realization. She wasn't a troublemaker. She was the one who signed their paychecks, and they had just tried to escort the boss off her own plane. Monica lowered her hand. "You've got 10 minutes," she said quietly, "to get this right, or I will." Then she turned, walked calmly to seat 1C, sat down, crossed her legs, and waited. But it was already too late, because she hadn't just taken her seat. She'd just taken control. At first, no one moved. Not the crew, not the passengers, not even the air. It was the kind of stillness that comes after a lightning strike, when everyone's too stunned to speak, too cautious to breathe. Brooke Sanders, still holding Monica's CEO card in her hand, looked at it again, as if she needed confirmation from the universe. Then she did something that changed everything. She turned toward the cabin and said clearly, "She's telling the truth. This is her plane." The words didn't echo, but they landed, like a verdict. Captain Briggs stepped out again, face flushed. "What's going on here?" Brooke extended the card. "Sir, she's the CEO of Ascend Holdings." Briggs didn't even look at it. "Anyone can print a card. Doesn't prove a damn thing." He turned to Monica, now calmly seated in 1C. "If you don't want to be removed, I suggest you stop playing games." Monica didn't blink. Instead, she pulled her phone from her coat pocket, tapped twice, and held it up. A voice came through instantly, clear, calm, authoritative. "This is Kendra Miles, Executive Assistant to Monica Ellis, CEO of Ascend Holdings. All current cabin activity is being recorded and streamed in real time to our Ethics and Operations Division." The speaker volume wasn't high, but it didn't need to be, because everyone heard it. Everyone. Haley's face drained of color. Jason Myers, still lounging in 1A, sat upright for the first time. Trish clutched her purse tighter. And Brooke? She smiled. Not out of satisfaction, but out of relief. Relief that the truth had finally entered the room, and it hadn't come in yelling. It had walked in quietly and flipped the whole place inside out. Captain Briggs stepped back, muttering something under his breath. But the damage was already done. And then, the second twist hit. Brooke cleared her throat. "Ma'am," she said to Monica, gently, "I think you should know. This isn't the first time." Monica looked up. Brooke's voice trembled slightly, but she didn't stop. "2 months ago, I saw Haley reroute a black passenger to economy. She claimed his barcode didn't scan. It did. I was right there. She told me not to say anything." The cabin gasped softly. No longer a misunderstanding. Now, a pattern. Monica exhaled slowly, not from shock, but from the burden of confirmation. Because deep down, she already knew. This wasn't about her seat. It wasn't about a boarding pass. It was about a system, one that dressed itself in policy but reeked of bias. She stood again, looked around the cabin. "Ask yourself something," she said to no one in particular, but to everyone at once. "If I were a man in a tailored suit, or a woman who looked more like what you expected, would we even be having this conversation?" No one answered, but no one needed to. Because the silence had finally changed. It was no longer complicit. Now, it was accountable. Kendra's voice returned through the phone. "Protocol is now in active review mode. Do you want to proceed with formal crew dismissal? Monica looked at the faces before her. Briggs, still red. Haley, still frozen. Brooke, steady. Then she said, "Not yet. Let them finish showing who they really are." She sat back down, folded her hands, and waited. Because justice isn't loud, it's patient. And when it arrives, it doesn't knock. It walks right in and asks for its seat back. The ripple didn't start with a shout. It started with a whisper, a murmur near row 4, a shaky voice from a woman in business casual whispering to her neighbor, "I've flown Ascend for 7 years. I've never seen this happen to anyone who looked like him." And then came another voice, this one louder, firmer. She never even raised her voice, and they still treated her like a problem. From the back of the cabin, a man in his 60s, silver hair and eyes full of regret, slowly stood up. "This isn't about a ticket anymore," he said. "This is about how we see each other, and how often we're wrong." Monica didn't look triumphant. She looked resolved. She hadn't come here for validation. She came to hold up a mirror. And now, the cabin was looking straight into it. Captain Briggs tried once more to regain control. He stepped forward, voice tighter now. "This has gotten out of hand. You're disrupting the flight. You're destabilizing the environment." But before he could say another word, a passenger near 2B, a teacher named Carla, raised her phone. "Sir, the only thing destabilizing this flight was how you treated her." Applause. Not thunderous, not wild, but steady, grounded, human. It wasn't just support, it was accountability. Haley backed away, pressing herself against the galley door like it might let her disappear. Brooke, standing at the front now, squarely beside Monica, took a breath and said, "She never disrespected this crew. She complied with every word. The only people who lost control are the ones who thought they had it." That was it. The power shifted, no longer in the hands of rank or uniform or seniority. It belonged to truth now, to integrity, to the people who saw what happened and refused to stay quiet. Then came Officer Trey Wilson. Security, calm, composed, carrying nothing but a folder. He approached the front of the cabin, paused beside Monica's seat, and said, "Ma'am, I've reviewed the internal records forwarded by your team. Your identification is confirmed. So is the violation report from your assistant." He turned to Captain Briggs. "Sir, by company policy and based on current documentation, you are relieved of duty for this flight, effective immediately." Briggs blinked. "You can't be serious." But he was already stepping back. Haley followed, silent, ego shattered. And the rest of the cabin? Watched, recorded, remembered. Monica stood slowly, looked around. Her eyes scanned every face, not to gloat, not to judge, but to ask, without speaking, "What did you see? And what will you say when it's your turn?" Then she turned toward Brooke. "Thank you for standing up." Brooke looked stunned. "I didn't know if it would help." "It did," Monica said softly. "Because silence doesn't protect you. It only delays what's inevitable." Kendra's voice returned one last time through Monica's phone. "Board members have issued full internal approval. Do you want to proceed?" Monica gave a small nod. "Yes. Begin full escalation, crew dismissal, bias audit, passenger compensation." "And Brooke," she added, "offer her a leadership track. We need more people like her in charge." The passengers clapped again, not out of celebration, but out of something far rarer, respect. She turned back to the aisle, voice now meant for everyone. "This cabin isn't just a place to sit. It's a stage for how we treat people who don't look like us. And today, you all just helped rewrite the script. The plane didn't take off that hour, but something else did. Awareness, accountability, and the end of looking away. The plane never left the gate that evening, but something far more important took flight. Monica Ellis didn't stay for applause. She didn't wait for interviews or camera crews. She stepped off the aircraft as quietly as she had boarded it. No grand gestures, no last word. Just one final glance back through the cabin, where moments ago she had been seen as a problem. Now, a reckoning. In the hours that followed, Ascend Airlines issued a full internal memo, a formal apology, a detailed timeline of corrective actions, and a list of 4 names, each marked, terminated with cause. Brooke Sanders, promoted, lead flight attendant on the very next route out of Denver, and later, invited to help revise company-wide training for new hires. 3 weeks passed, then 6. At Gate D14 in Charlotte, a new plaque was mounted quietly near the first-class boarding lane. It read, "Class is not where you sit, it's how you see others." M.E. Just initials. No photos. No fanfare. Because Monica had never wanted a stage. She wanted a standard. And as for the cabin that watched, they remembered. A teacher who stood up that night began a new semester with a changed curriculum, adding a module on unconscious bias. A father flying with his teenage son used the incident to talk about character over status. A young black girl watching the story online days later whispered to her mom, "Maybe one day I'll be the boss too." But not all changes were public. Some happened quietly, like truth often does. A gate agent in Detroit paused before questioning the next unexpected first-class passenger. A crew leader in Dallas decided to speak up when a teammate crossed a line, and a training manager in Miami rewrote her onboarding slides because no one should ever feel like she did. And Monica? She went back to work. No media tour, no best-selling memoir, just the same office, the same inbox, the same mission. But on her desk now sat a framed photo taken years ago. She was 17, wearing a yellow dress, the same trip where she'd first been told, "Are you sure you belong up here?" It had taken her years to find the answer, but that day on Flight AA 2764, she gave it to the world, and the world finally listened. Life application. The seat isn't the lesson. The lens is. This wasn't a story about airplanes, or boarding passes, or premium cabins. It was a story about assumptions, and how easily they betray the truth. You see, we often judge others by their shoes, their skin, their silence. But respect isn't earned by how loud you demand it. It's earned by how quietly you carry it, until the world has no choice but to notice. So here's the question. What would you have done? Would you have spoken up like Brooke, stayed silent like Haley, or waited until it was safe to choose a side? Because injustice doesn't always scream. Sometimes it sits in row 1C with a ticket, a truth, and a name you didn't bother to ask. If this story moved you, share it. Not for views, not for outrage, but for someone who needs to remember that power doesn't need permission. It just needs a seat.